Okay, so we can start.
Yes, please.
So today we will discuss the second dhyana, and I will more stick to the text because the text in many places is very interesting, but we will only be concerned with important points. We won't read uh, sentence by sentence unless it is necessary. Well, it is necessary in the beginning because it was one of the questions. It says the same in the third dhyana. It says that the meditator who has attained the first dhyana, he should strive to proceed to the second one. If the meditator's path is beset by cankers, so it means, in other words, it indirectly says that it is very likely that when we are in dhyana, we being ordinary meditators, uh, not Revata, Bhikkhu Revata or Modgalyana, we are ordinary meditators, so we are going to bring our uh, akusala vitakas also into dhyana. They will appear, but it is very important to remember, I have explained it before, as Abhidharmakosa explains, when we are in dhyana, because we are fixed on the object of dhyana, on our kamatana, so when the inflow and outflow of impurities appear, they are not connected with with kama guna, with the desire for the objects of the five senses. They are connected with the bhava ashrava, not with the kama ashrava. And bhava ashrava, it means we may start having mana, having an idea of self. In Buddhism, any idea of self is called manana. In Pali, manana, from mana comes from manana. We start thinking that we are something. We are this or that. We are good, or we are not good enough, or we are whatever we may think. And so the mind can again create all kinds of images, because I have explained the deep concentration using the Theravada explanation is close to bhavanga, to the base of the consciousness, or to the basic consciousness from which the objects actually appear. Especially in case of meditation, when we are in dhyana, the difference between being in dhyana and not being in dhyana is, when we are in dhyana, we can find the object of dhyana in the bhavanga itself. And we can also find the mind, or the chitta viti, which goes to that object. And in that chitta viti, which is called past, in Samanantara Pratyaya in Pali, Wu Tian Yuan, in this Samanantara Pratyaya, in this immediately preceding mental process, we can analyze the 5 factors which are responsible for this state of dhyana. If they are not active, then we are not in first dhyana. They are active, therefore we are fixed. Our mind is fixed on the object due to the kusala, with previous kusala vitaka and kusala vichara, which has fixed us on the object. So the images can still crop from the mind, but the meditator in dhyana does not leave the object. And the mind, because the object is not changing, the sensation is not changing, the mind is not changing. So the impermanence in dhyana is momentary. It is not the citta viti as described in the Theravada Abhidharma. You don't change attention. Attention is fixed on the meditation object, but the images will still appear. But you don't change attention. You have to, attention is the beginning of the mental process. And because the attention does not change, the mind remains fixed on the same object. So we have already explained the principle you find in Abhidharmakosa and elsewhere in Northern Buddhism. We distinguish the so-called Hina Bhagya dhyana, that is dhyana beset by what here is called cankers, by all kinds of ideas and sensations, then and all kinds of perceptions which may be changing, but the mind is still fixed on the object. It does not leave the object. This is a difference between the dhyana and the normal state. In the dhyana, you don't lose the object. Now, you can still have all kinds of vitakas and vicharas, but the object remains the same because your mind is fixed. So, strictly speaking, you may think you are losing the dhyana, but you don't. It is defiled dhyana. Then you have the sthiti bhagya dhyana. You remain in the same state. You don't fall into the defiled dhyana. And you have the vishesha bhagya dhyana, the dhyana which is described here, in which you contemplate the inconvenience of this lower dhyana, and that's how you get into the higher state, because you contemplate the inconvenience of the lower state. Unless you contemplate the inconvenience of the lower state, you will not get into the higher state. So the inconvenience of the lower state, the inconvenience of vitaka and vichara, even kusala vitaka and vichara, which enabled you to enter the dhyana, must be very clear. So then you contemplate, when you see clearly the disturbing nature of vitaka and vichara, then you can contemplate these factors like disturbing factors, like disturbance of peace. The dhyana is the way to shamatha. Shamatha means peace. And the perfect peace and the real dhyana, in a way, as Yogacara Bhumi Shastra teaches, real dhyana, because it is similar to nirvana. It is not nirvana, but similar to nirvana. In nirvana, there is no place for attachment to sensations. In the fourth dhyana also, there is no place for attachment to sensations. And in Buddhism, we are in samsara because we are attached to sensations. So we don't have freedom. The Arahat or the Buddha, the Shravaka Buddha, the perfect Buddha, Pratyeka Buddha, they are not attached to sensations. So they are in a state of complete balance. This balance is Samadhi. Samadhi means balance. But this balance will not be perfect unless these so-called apalakshas, those factors of dhyana which make the dhyana imperfect, are clearly discovered and removed. So the first apalaksha to be discovered and removed is vitarka vichara. And you will see very clearly the inconvenience of vitarka and vichara because you are confronted with all kinds of disturbing factors. So you see that this dhyana is still disturbed. Unless you see clearly that this dhyana is really disturbed, you won't have much interest for going higher. When you see that the dhyana is disturbed, then you have interest for going higher. This is a meaning here explained in regard to second dhyana, also in regard to third dhyana you will find the same explanation, because you see the ashrava, the inflow and outflow of impurities into the mind. The idea of self, separate self, in Buddhism is also impurity. And it will come in the dhyana. That's why we distinguish also anashrava dhyana, the dhyana beyond inflow and outflow of impurities, and that is a dhyana of a liberated person. And the aim of practicing the dhyanas finally is the liberation of the mind. And the liberation of the mind comes from understanding very clearly the inconvenience of attachment to sensations. And this inconvenience of attachment to sensations is most clearly in the fourth dhyana. That's why it is called the real dhyana. The others are in a way preparatory dhyanas. So you contemplate, it says very clearly, you contemplate these apalakshas, these inflow and outflow of impurity or disturbances of the dhyana, in what state? This state is called in Northern Buddhism samantaka, which here is translated as the in the stage of dhyana adjacent to the second absorption. According to Theravada, if you want to change the sphere of perception from the lower to the higher, from the kama to arupa, and then from the first dhyana to the second dhyana to third dhyana to fourth dhyana. Also, from the point of view of Abhidharma, if you study the meditation with the Abhidharma outlook in Theravada based on the analysis of the chitta vittis, of the cognition processes. So the realization of Sotapanna, Anagami and so on, same like the changing of the sphere of perception from kama to rupa, from first dhyana to second dhyana, is described in Abhidharma as the process, also jhana process, special jhana process, marked by parikama, preparatory stage, which does not appear when you already have done a lot of jhana practice before. Then you have the upachara, approaching stage, anuloma, that means stage of joining. Then you have or coming near. Then you have gotrabu, the stage of changing the sphere of perception, and then you enter the dhyana. Now, in Northern Buddhism, this process is called samantaka. First, you enter samantaka, adjacent stage to the second dhyana, then you can enter the second dhyana. But the Southern Buddhism is based on the analysis of the chitta vittis, detailed analysis of the chitta vittis. So this analysis of the jhana, of going into the mundane or supermundane dhyana, is rather more detailed. But it is also kind of a samantaka, adjacent dhyana. And you get into this adjacent dhyana because you have contemplated the disturbances in the dhyana. If you don't contemplate the disturbances in the dhyana, you won't go from the first dhyana to the second dhyana. And the disturbance of the first dhyana is precisely vitarka and vichara. We have already explained. In the jhana, the perception, sensation becomes very sensitive, so you actually see, feel how vitarka is kind of beating repeatedly your mind at the object, and vichara is massaging your mind at the object. And this is a kind of unpleasant sensation. I have explained, especially if you are a vipassana, well versed in vipassana, then this being unpleasant part of dhyana becomes almost immediately clear. Even so, coming into dhyana first time is especially overwhelming experience, like entering the heaven. But for the vipassana practitioner, it is a disturbed heaven. So, even so, the vitaka and vichara, kusala vitaka and vichara is the condition for the first dhyana. We can only enter first dhyana, also from first dhyana to the second dhyana, when we have shuddha dhyana. This Abhidharmakosa explains very clear. When we have a dhyana not molested by the inflow and outflow of impurities. But this inflow and outflow of impurities becomes the kind of your conditioning for wanting to go higher. But you can only go higher when you have pure dhyana. If you don't have pure dhyana, you will not get higher. The Abhidharma explained this very clearly. So this part becomes clear and we come to the questions. Also, before we come to the questions, it's very important one point which Abhidharmakosa explains very clearly, that if we have anushayas in the mind, and we will have anushayas in the mind because we are not Buddhas. If we have anushayas in the mind, they are connected either to the object or they are samprayoga. Samprayoga here means, actually, samprayoga means connection or application. Application of what? Of defilements. So you have either the attachment to the object, or you have inflow of some perceptions, images from the mind, which make you think you are this or that, which make you think you are you want this or want that, but it will be connected not with, because you are in dhyana, it will not be connected with the desires of the five senses. It will be connected with the desires for some existence. And this desire for the existence is very subtle. It will be always there unless we have attained the full state of awakening. This desire for existence is very, very subtle. Desire for non-existence is also kind based on the desire for existence. So in a way it is a vicious circle which only a perfect enlightenment can break through. So first question, if the fetters can disturb the mind even in the first absorption, why is it that only the applied and sustained thoughts are mentioned in the second absorption? Now, very important question. The text explains that as to the first dhyana, all inflow and outflow of impurities, they have to do directly with vitarka and vichara. No matter what inflow and outflow of impurities come, it will be based on vitarka and vichara. That's why, because you see it very clearly, you want to get rid of vitarka and vichara. So first you got into the first dhyana because you applied vitarka and vichara skillfully to your meditation object. But now you are in the first dhyana already, and the same forces, vitarka and vichara, kind of cause waves in your mind. And you can see it very clearly because your mind becomes very sensitive. besides, the text says, if the meditator has not contemplated the danger of the great rapture of priti before attaining the first absorption, it will devastate his concentration. Why? Because when we enter the dhyana, this factor of priti is overwhelming. Then, because it is so overwhelming, it is very easy to become completely get into the chaotic mind due to this access of priti. Priti is connected with audatyam, with excitement. It lifts the mind. And if it is not controlled, then it will lead back to the kama mind, to the nivarana. So important is, it is abandoning vitarka, vichara is abandoning a little benefit for the sake of great benefit. The great benefit is the second dhyana. And the second dhyana is based on deeper concentration. And we practice shamatha to master concentration. Shamatha is the process of mastering the concentration. And the Buddha explains that jhana, in order to get to the other shore, to the shore free from suffering, one has to learn to swim. And he compares in Jhana Samyutta, he compares swimming to practicing the jhana. Now, strictly speaking, the vipassana is also a jhana, but a vipassana jhana. But without jhana, there is no realization. The difference is that the realized person, he cannot leave samadhi, because if he leaves samadhi, the non-balance of mind. The non-balance of mind is the root of defilements, is the cause for abandoning the middle way. So when there is the deeper concentration, then automatically the mind becomes more peaceful. That's why in the northern tradition, the first and second dhyana is called sapriti dhyana. It is a dhyana disturbed by priti, by joy. The third dhyana is called the peaceful dhyana. In Chinese, anle. The first is shila, happiness with joy. Then anle, the peaceful happiness. The third dhyana is peaceful happiness because it is deprived of priti. It is deprived of priti because it has more mindfulness and more awareness and more detachment. As long as priti is there, these qualities of mindfulness and awareness are hindered by this rising tendency of the mind caused by joy. This should be very clear. That's why in the second dhyana, the vitarka and vichara disappears, and as we will see, its cause is, I am jumping forward, it is explained little later, its cause, just like cause of the first dhyana is vitarka and vichara, the cause of the second dhyana is the adhyatmika prasada, the inner clarity. Inner clarity is based on a deeper concentration due to the disappearance of the vitarka and vichara. Therefore, mindfulness and awareness improves, but due to this uplifting tendency of the joy, it does not yet come to the full impression. It comes to the full impression only in the first dhyana, in the third dhyana, where the priti is absent. Then we practice dhyana in order to attain the perfect peace. In order to perfect peace is the supreme happiness. Then the fourth dhyana, there is no more happiness. But we practice shamatha for happiness. So what happiness is in fourth dhyana? There is happiness called upeksha sukha. The happiness based on detachment. This happiness based on detachment, happiness based on the sensation of neither pleasure nor displeasure, is the most peaceful. But it is most peaceful not in a state lower. It is most peaceful only in the high state, because the mind becomes more and more sensitive. The higher the dhyana, the more sensitive the mind. Because the more mind becomes more sensitive, it is able to discover the finer and finer disturbances, until it can discover also what is the disturbance of being in samsara. So Buddha explains in some suttas like Bahu Vedaniya Sutta of Majjhima Nikaya the process of liberation as practicing the finer and finer sensation in order to discover finer and finer disturbances until liberation free from disturbance. So another question, you only explain that applied thought and sustained thought needs to be abandoned. Why you do not explain vexations? We have mentioned there are vexations in the dhyana also, but they are connected with the bhava ashrava, with the inflow and outflow of impurities due to attachment to existence, not due to attachment to the 5 objects of the senses. This attachment is too gross in the state of dhyana. It is not when we go back to the normal state of mind, then it will not be too gross, because these latent tendencies, anushayas, are still there. We are not yet Buddhas. But in the dhyana, it will not appear, because in the more subtle, the gross is not desirable. In the gross, the subtle is desirable, but in the subtle, the gross is not desirable. This should be very clear. So this is very important, this beginning. Applied and sustained thought in regard to the first dhyana means skillful use of applied and sustained thought. We have explained that. The attachment and other sensation in the first dhyana are also called applied and sustained thought. All attachments in the first dhyana, they are also applied and sustained thought. Because applied and sustained thought, they are the manasika japa. They are the chattering of the mind. And in second dhyana, the mind becomes silent. That means in a well-maintained second dhyana. Not in the second dhyana that we are likely to attain. So this second dhyana, which we will attain, will still be marked by inflow and outflow of impurities. But then, strictly speaking, we are already at the threshold of the second dhyana. We are not really in the second dhyana. Second dhyana is silent, as the text clearly explains. Because it is vitarka and vichara which produces the language. They are called the vachi samskaras, the will formations of the speech. These will formations of the speech become appeased in the second dhyana. Because they are appeased, therefore the second dhyana is rooted in samadhi. The first dhyana is not called rooted in samadhi, even so it is of course rooted also in samadhi. All dhyanas are rooted in one-pointedness of the mind. But it is not so called because it is attained through body isolation. Through isolation for desire of the objects of the five senses. If we don't have this kaya viveka, bodily isolation, we will never get into dhyana. Impossible. We can only do possible. Nobody can do impossible. So the sustained and applied thought is, we have explained before, is what conducts will, and sustained thought is what conducts the mind to the object. The mind moves to the object because it is propelled, like a boat is propelled by the two oars, which is will and vitarka, and applied thought. But now in the second dhyana the mind becomes silent, so it's enough to conduct the mind to the object by pure will. There is no necessity for this vitarka and vichara. In Abhidharmakosa, vitarka is defined, I have mentioned that before, as mati, which means discerning wisdom, and will. This discerning wisdom and will is the vitarka. And due to this vitarka, we apply to the chosen object. But we, of course, need also will. But after the first dhyana, service of vitarka and vichara no needed anymore, because the one-pointedness has improved and the mind becomes silent. So the skillful use of applied and sustained thought appears to be good. However, it is robber because it deprives me of great benefit. So one thinks like this: applied and sustained thought are irritating like sounds, annoying a person who is tired and wishes to sleep. Very wonderful simile, shows clearly the intelligence of the author, who was indeed a great master of the jhana. So it is like the sound for a wise person, this vitarka vichara for a wise person who wants to go deep, completely appeased concentration. This vitarka and vichara is like a noise in the mind. When this noise disappears, then comes adhyatmika prasada, inner self-confidence. We have translated. When inner self-confidence is there, automatically the mindfulness and awareness becomes deeper, but not deep enough to be overwhelming factor because of the priti. So of course, if we want to go higher, we want to discover the this aspect of excitement which is latent to joy. This aspect of excitement is not latent to happiness, but it is latent to joy. Why? Because joy in Theravada Buddhism is like rejoicing at the object, so it is explained. In Abhidharmakosa, in the Northern Buddhism, it is explained as saumanasyam, as a pleasant mental sensation. Yeah, rejoicing at something is also connected with a pleasant mental sensation. So it only describes the same process from different points of view. You cannot rejoice at the object without having a pleasant mental sensation. Now the sukha is the bodily sensation, but bodily sensation in the kama sphere, but in the sphere of dhyana, it is purely mental sensation. Purely mental sensation means here that sensation penetrating the body of mental factors. So it is explained as prashrabdi. Prashrabdi means clarity and appeasement. And this clarity and appeasement is connected with lightness, smoothness, straightness, all these expertise, all these factors explained in the Abhidharma of thousand traditions, they accompany this clarity and relaxation. They are indispensable. So this inner self-confidence makes the happiness deeper, but still not perfect because of the disturbance by the joy, which lifts the mind. One who wants to attain the perfect balance of the mind does not want to have his mind lifted by anything. So, it is not yet defined by mindfulness and awareness, even so it is there very clearly. But because of the excitement of joy, it does not come to a full expression. So this inner self-confidence of the second dhyana can be compared to stars, moon, and mountains reflected in clear water without ripples. This self-confidence and purity is called the noble silence of the sages. Arya Mauna. Muni is a sage. Mauna is silence. So the sage is silent. And why is the sage silent? Does it mean the sage does not speak? Of course the sage is speaking. But the difference between the sage and the non-sage is what? Yacha loke samutiya na ta upeti muni. The one who is a sage uses the conventions of the world, uses the language of the world, becomes expert of the language of the world, but does not cling to the language of the world. He uses it, but does not cling to it. That's why he is called sage, the silent. Now in his second dhyana, no more vitarka vichara, so even so, it is only a temporary silence. It is nevertheless the silence which gives the mind this taste of deeper appeasement. And the deeper appeasement is what is the shamatha practice all about. So it is called silence born of concentration. We have explained before, and this is very important, the principle of Yogacara Bhumishastra, which in northern tradition, in China, in Tibet, we always explain the shamatha on these principles of the Yogacara Bhumishastra. In Yogacara Bhumishastra, I repeat, I have already mentioned that before, we have the base for dhyana, which is always the ekagrata, the one-pointedness of the mind. We have the benefits of the dhyana, which is in first dhyana, the priti and sukha, the joy and happiness. In the second dhyana again, same, joy and happiness. But the more subtle happiness, because more mindfulness and awareness and more detachment. And we have the cause of the dhyana. The cause of the dhyana, of the first dhyana, is kusala, wholesome vitarka and vichara. The cause of the second dhyana is this very adhyatmika prasada, the inner prasada can be translated as faith, shraddha. Why faith? Why shraddha? What is, according to Theravada Abhidharma, what is the manifestation of the shraddha? Akalusya, purity. And what is the rasa? What is the taste? What is the function of the faith? The Theravada Abhidharma explains it is the pasadana, it is the clarity. The inner faith or inner clarity or inner illumination comes because the mind becomes silent. And because the mind becomes silent, it will arise from superior concentration. Not of the first dhyana, but to the first dhyana. Here is a little English mistake. I'm glad I can discover mistakes in English. So the second dhyana is samadhija, is born of samadhi because of this quality of inner illumination, inner silence. And the first dhyana is called vivekaja, born of separation, because it is born of separation from the kama, from the desire for panchaguna, for the 5 objects of the 5 senses. Now the last question. The second dhyana also arises from isolation, from fetters, as in the first dhyana. So why it is not called arisen from seclusion, as the first dhyana? Now the answer is also the second dhyana arises from isolation, from fetters. Nevertheless, its power of concentration is greater. Therefore, it is called arisen from concentration. Why it is greater, we have explained. And we have explained when one says the first dhyana is arisen from seclusion, it means seclusion from the desire realm. So now we come to the third dhyana. We can only touch it today, and we will complete it and go to the fourth dhyana in the coming week. So again, the third dhyana, the same principle you see here. The practitioner should seek a deeper concentration. In the second dhyana, there are surely vexations. We have already explained this. As long as we have anushayas, latent tendencies to defilements, there will be concerned either with the object. Here is only mental object because we are in dhyana, or they will be concerned with some prayoga, with the impurities coming from the mind itself. Samprayoga here may be or can also be translated as inner bondage. That may be the best translation from Samprayoga here. So of course, they come together, but it is a matter of intensity. And he gives the idea what kind of impurities can arise in dhyana: desire, pride, wrong view, doubt. All these are bondages to the impurities coming not from the outer objects but from the mind itself. The mind is not appeased, therefore it gives rise to desire, it gives rise to pride. Pride is based on desire. If we have no desire, we have no pride. Wrong view is also based on desire. But desire for what? Here, not desire for enjoying the good tastes, good touch, but here the desire for some mental peace, more mental enjoyment. And doubt, what kind of doubt? As long as we are not realized, then we have a doubt. What am I? What is the meaning of existence? All of this is also based on desire. Because, but not desire for the outer objects of the senses, but for desire of finding the truth of existence. This desire also disturbs the quality of appeasement of the dhyana. They spoil the concentration of the second dhyana. They are thieves of the second dhyana. So in order to go to third dhyana, you have to catch the thief of the second dhyana. In order to go to the second dhyana, you have to catch the thief of the first dhyana. When you catch the thief, you bind him with your mindfulness and awareness, then you are ready to enter the process of, as we have explained, of samantaka, and contemplate in samantaka. In samantaka you adjust to the higher stage. Parikama, upachara, anuloma, gotrabhu. Special kind of jhana process. Special kind of running mind. Well, then we come to the... So one seeking the third absorption must remove these ills. Upadravas. Upadrava actually literally means catastrophes. They are catastrophes. That's why we have learned, and anyone who practices dhyana will learn it also. We have to contemplate these disturbances as being the prison, as being the hell, as being the cancer, as being the bondage. So the mind will get disgust. Because the mind will get disgust with them, it goes higher. Same in Vipassana. Because the mind becomes disgusted, it can go higher. If it is not disgusted, it will not get higher. But in Vipassana, it becomes disgusted with impermanence. Here, it becomes disgusted with what disturbs the peace. That's why it is called shamatha. So now, let us finish here, because we will still have to go to the questions, and we will cover the third dhyana and hopefully go to the fourth dhyana in the coming week. Okay, Supriya, what are the questions?
There is one question, but before that, Bhante, I just wanted to ask you if you want to, at the beginning of the class, you said you wanted to answer Gautam's question. He did join the session, but I think he dropped out. He said to say that there is a friend who is unwell and he was taking the friend to hospital. But if
Anyway,
you
so
want to answer that
you have
question,
recorded, no? You have recorded,
correct,
so
correct.
he
So
can listen to it. Huh?
yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay. So the question then for today is from Chotso, and she says, thank you for the teaching. Is there a time when Preeti is experienced as unpleasant?
Pardon?
Is there a time? Is there a time when Preeti is experienced as unpleasant?
Yes, of course.
And so there's a little continuation, if I can, Bante, about the same question. She asks, how not to give rise to subtle aversion for Preeti, if so? Also, you say desire for non-existence is based on desire for existence.
Yes,
Please,
of
can you
course.
elaborate? There are more questions, but I think I'll leave you with this for now. The Preeti one and the existence and non-existence one, and then I'll
Of
ask
course,
them.
in a normal state of mind, the prite is a positive state. When
Yes.
we are glad, we open. If we are not glad, we will not open. So the gladness, to be glad, it opens the heart. It is good. Even from the medical point of view, if you study Ayurveda, if you study Chinese medicine, the prite, the shi, is what opens the heart. It is good for the heart. But the access of pite, or same in Ayurveda, same in Chinese medicine, access of pite is harmful for the heart. Euphoria is harmful for the heart. It brings unrest to the heart. And jhana is a very powerful priti. It is not a common priti that you feel with the worldly mind. It is a very powerful priti. And because in jhana your mind becomes very, very sensitive, so you feel it as a disturbing factor. In a normal worldly mind, you don't feel it as a disturbing factor. It is very, unless you have kind of euphoria, which is more suffering than joy, then it is a very healthy state to rejoice. We should, in India, I remember in Mumbai, in park, sometimes people gather together, especially the Sadarjis, and they laugh, whole group of people laughing together, and then they go to work, so they can face much better the stress of the monotonous work with computer and so on, because the heart is open. So it is very positive. But in access, it is very negative. It does not open the heart. It brings excitement to the heart. And excitement is not a wholesome state of mind. It has the quality of lifting. And the excitement is called audatya. It has also the quality of lifting, from ud, up. And the other question was about the
yes, Bhante, it is about, you mentioned that there is desire for non-existence, and that is based on the desire for existence.
Yeah, it is,
if you could clarify that a little bit more.
It is very, very clear. Just like the attachment and aversion are two sides of the same coin, which is clinging to existence. So the same principle you can apply here. When you have attachment to existence, then you will have also likely to have aversion. It is quite natural. The aversion, according to Buddhism, is also rooted in tanha. All defilements are, according to the principle of pratitya samutpada, rooted in tanha, in thirst. Because you are not appeased at the moment, so you are turning either to desire, or you are either turning to desire for the pleasant object, which is then connected with attachment, or you are bound to aversion to the unpleasant object, which is the opposite of attachment. So both are rooted in tanha. And thirst is because you are not balanced. When we are balanced, we have no thirst. We have thirst because we are not balanced. So the Arahat, the Buddha, has no thirst because he remains in the balanced state. He has realized the middle path. We have not realized the middle path. We may have touched it a little bit, but not realized it. The realization of the middle path is a privilege of the Buddha. So he is free from thirst. He is balanced. So he is not, he has pleasant sensation, but not tendency to cling to pleasant sensation. He has unpleasant sensation, but no tendency to aversion. He has neutral sensation, but no tendency to ignorance, which manifests as excitement, worry, or sloth and torpor, lethargia. This Arahat, Buddha, they are free of this. That's why they are Buddhas. They not subjected to paryavastana, to active defilements. But the Arahat may still have certain tendencies. But the Buddha is Dharmakaya. He has no tendency whatsoever. He is the Dharma himself. This principle you will find also in Theravada. Yo Dhammam pasati, so Buddham pasati. Yo Buddham pasati, so Dhammam pasati. So the Buddha is Dharma. Dharma is Buddha. When we believe in that, we are Buddhists. Okay.
There's one more question, Bhante. In the description of the first jhana, the kind of bliss that is experienced by the meditator. And today when you were talking about vitarka vichara, you described it as sort of defiled jhana, which a vipassana meditator would know. Is it possible for it says, for a foolish meditator like myself to just get attached to experiencing that bliss of first jhana, and what must one do to progress? How, if that bliss is so overwhelming, because how does a meditator overcome that to push forward beyond that?
Because you become more sensitive, you see more subtle defilements. This is a rule, same rule in Vipassana, same rule in Shamatha. The more sensitive the mind, the more subtle the defilements. The gross mind has, even from the point of view of subtle mind, has a gross defilements, but he does not see them. So that's why the Abhidharmakosa says the happiness of the fools is suffering for the wise, and the happiness of the wise is suffering for the fools. So we learn meditation by learning to discover from a more gross to more subtle. That's why these defilements in Abhidharmakosa, they are explained in 9 stages. Each stage, say the lower stage, middle stage, higher stage, has another 3 stages. So in order to explain very clearly how through experiencing the subtle, you understand the subtle. If we don't experience the subtle, we will not understand the subtle. So when we experience this subtle bliss of the dhyana, we can see the disturbing factor of joy. When we don't experience the subtle bliss of jhana, we will not see the defiling potential of joy. It is impossible to see. We have to go to jhana to see it. So jhana is also a slow process of mastery. When we attain the jhana, it does not mean we are still a very, very, very far way to go to mastery of jhana. And especially if one wants to practice the path of bodhisattva, Asanga says in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra that the Shravaka, he takes joy in nirvana, the Grihastha takes joy in sensuality, but the bodhisattva should take a joy in jhana. Why? Because he takes joy in the subtle. Because of the subtle, experiencing the subtle, he can tolerate the suffering of samsara. If he does not experience the subtle, he will not tolerate the suffering of samsara. And not tolerating the suffering of samsara, as Asanga explains in Yogacara Bhumi Shastra, is the wrong attention for a bodhisattva, not for a disciple. Okay?
I think that's all we have today.
Okay, so let us transfer the merit for the benefit of all sentient beings, and we will meet hopefully in good health and peace next week. Okay? Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Eta vata chamehi sampatam punya sampadam sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiram rakantu loka sasana. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiram rakantu desana. Aka satta chabumatha deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chiram rakantu tumampara. Devo vasatu kalene sasa sampati hotu cha pito bhavatu loko cha raja bhavatu dhammiko. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, Supriya.
Thank you so much, Bhante. Namaste.
Okay, take care, bye-bye.
See you next week. Thank you everybody.